Alrighty, y'all. Welcome to the Collegiate's 2024 March Madness podcast. I am your co-host, Pierson VanGorp, here with other co-hosts Jack Walker and James Herold. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. Doing excellent. March, best time of the year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So today, in this first episode of our March Madness edition, we'll get into some of the teams that we think are the favorites or the best team in the country at the moment, some sleeper teams, and then also our championship pick for both the women's and men's side of the bracket. Let's get into the women's side first. There's one team right now I think that is the clear favorite. They're 32-0 SEC champs. It's the South Carolina Gamecocks, led by center Camila Cardoso, who's been averaging 14 points per game and 9.5 rebounds per game, along with 2.6 blocks per game. So she's been a force. But recently she got into a scuffle. So, Jack, if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so SEC championship game, LSU, South Carolina. LSU obviously the reigning champs. So this was a pretty big game. And all of a sudden, I think it was a timeout was called. And Cardoso came over and kind of just shoved a LSU player, sparked a big fight. And I think it delayed the game for close to 30 minutes.
Yep.
And yeah, that was definitely the biggest controversy of the weekend and sports stories probably in general.
For sure. Yeah, there was even like a fan that got involved, and that's why I think a part of that reason why it was delayed for 30 minutes was because there was a fan involved. But other than that, South Carolina's got other players. Raven Johnson has also been a key contributor. She leads the team in assists, averaging about just under 5 a game and also averaging 2 steals a game. I think they're the deepest team in the country in terms of just how many players they can have that can step up. They have over 7 players that average over 8 points per game this season. However, the thing with me, they're not going to be my championship pick just because I know they faced adversity in some forms, but they haven't faced a loss. And similar to last year, they were undefeated heading into the tournament, and they didn't have a loss on their belt. And this might be a bad argument, but I really think that in the tournament, if you haven't experienced any type of adversity through a loss, then you're going to lose a game that's going to be really close, and that's just my opinion.
I think that's a fair point, but at the end of the day, Dawn Staley's a very accomplished coach. Probably not many better than her in the women's college basketball, and can't really 32-0 going into March. I mean, you really can't argue with that. I mean, that's about as hot as you can get. It is as hot as you can get.
For sure. So just before we get into our championship picks, I'll get into my sleeper team. And it took me a little bit to find this team, but it's the Kansas State Wildcats. And they started their season off 21-1, and they had so they've played Iowa twice this season. I couldn't believe this. Like, they must have had a non-conference game, and they played in the tournament against them. But yeah, they're 21-1. They went 1-1 against Iowa. One of them was a 7-point loss, and one was a 7-point win. And through the season, they now have 7 losses. They kind of lost a few games throughout the Big 12 tournament, which puts them at the 5 seed in the tournament. So that's why they're my sleeper team. And all of their losses are by an average of 5.7 points per game. So all of their games have been close. They have not lost a game by over 10 points. And they have a star player. They're led by center Aoki Lee, who's averaging 20 points per game and 8.4 rebounds per game, along with 2.7 blocks per game. So similar to what Cardoso provided for the Gamecocks. And they also have a player that can facilitate a guard, Serena Sundell, who's averaging 12 points per game and 5.4 assists per game. I think that's going to be crucial for the tournament success. You need a big in the tournament that can do some damage, and you also need a person who can facilitate. So that's why Kansas State will be my sleeper team. But James, who is your championship pick for this year's Women's March Madness?
I got Iowa with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is a star player. This senior year for her, she's been named preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, or she was named that. She broke the Big Ten all-time scoring record. Became the Division I women's career scoring leader, and became all-time NCAA Division I men's and women's scoring leader. So she has tons of accolades under her belt, and I see Iowa going pretty far. There's another team I really think that is a great team that could make it to the championship, and that is UConn, led by Paige Beckers. She is a star player as well.
Former #1 player in the country. Yep.
Yes.
Coming out of high school. Yep.
Gino, it's good. That's a good coach.
Oh yeah, I mean his run through the
he's one of the-
2015,
Yeah,
2016,
I mean,
17. He went. Did he win 3 or 4 straight championships? Or something
It was.
like that.
I mean, it was just a crazy run.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like every year you would hear UConn.
Absolutely.
You know, they definitely got it. You can trust a coach like that in March. You know.
Absolutely. And then who is your championship pick?
So, I think I'm between 2 teams, and it's the top 2 teams on the AP poll. I mean, South Carolina, 32-0.
Absolutely.
Can't dispute that. You know, I mean, they're probably the far and away best team right now.
Oh, for sure.
And then the other one's going to be Iowa as well, just because Caitlin Clark, you know, I mean, that's just a once-in-a-lifetime basketball player.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's set in stone that there's a championship. That's the one thing that she's missing. She's accomplished everything
exactly.
else that a college basketball player could. She got Iowa to the championship last year, so she's capable of making a run. And I think this could be the year for the Hawkeyes. So those are my 2
Absolutely.
picks.
Yeah, you guys stole my pick. I had Iowa as well, and it's a pretty easy pick for me, just because they have Caitlin Clark, like you mentioned. She's been insane. They're 29-4 this season, and the fact that she not only is their biggest scorer, she's their biggest facilitator, and also she is second on the team in rebounds. I couldn't believe that, but I saw that as well. But the main reason I think they're going to win it all is because they're built for it. Last year, with the loss, with all the drama that Caitlin Clark was going through, I think that it's kind of setting her up to have a big postseason run this year. And like we saw with the court storming or with teams selling out arenas just when she plays against them, I think that Iowa as a whole has been prepared to go on a big run. Not just Caitlin Clark, but Iowa as a team. And they definitely can make a huge run by only Caitlin Clark, but I think they're going to need their team to just all contribute when it comes to the Final Four in order for them to win it all, and I think that she'll be able to do that. So my pick will be the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's transition into men's basketball. It's a little bit more unknown, I would say. I don't really know. There's a lot of really good teams and a lot of like top 10 teams that or you could say could win it all, and I'd be like, yeah, I think so too. But in my opinion, the favorite or the best team in the country is UConn. They're the reigning national champs for a reason. They're competing for that #1 overall seed with Houston. We'll see who gets that. But they have a record of 28-3. They're led by guard Tristan Newton, who returned from last year's roster to this year. He's averaging 15 points per game, 7.1 rebounds per game, and 5.8 assists per game. Newton, whose cousin is Vikings running back Aaron Jones, was a key contributor in last year's run. And then also I want to mention Loyola Maryland and Rutgers transfer Cam Spencer has been phenomenal. He's their X factor in my opinion. He's averaging 15 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game, and 3.4 assists per game. He's almost shooting 50-40-90 from the field, which is 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line, which that's you only hear that in like NBA, so to hear that a college player is doing that is insane. And then lastly, I'd like to add center Donovan Klinging is a force down low. He didn't even start last year because they had a better big.
It's a no-go, yeah.
He was insane, but Klingen is there now. He's 7'2", just a lob threat, can block a bunch of shots. He's been battling injury throughout the season, but I think he's mostly healed up. And then I think the biggest thing they got is Coach Hurley. He is just energetic. I think he's a really good coach in the way he spaces his players and also gets them open looks. And they've also proved they can beat some of the top teams in the country. They have wins over number 15 Texas, number 10 Gonzaga, number 18 Creighton, and they've beat Marquette twice. They are 3rd in adjusted offensive efficiency and 12th in adjusted defensive efficiency, according to KenPom. So that is my favorite.
You know, the way I see it in college basketball, I think there's 3 teams that are just above everybody else, and they're the top 3 teams in the AP pool. They've been top 3, I feel like, all year. It's Houston, UConn, Purdue.
Absolutely.
I feel like these 3 teams just have something that the others don't. Now, out of those 3, I think I would also agree that UConn, I feel like, is the best team in college basketball this year. As you mentioned, you know, Spencer, Klingen, Newton, even Castle, freshman.
Oh, for sure.
Great player. They just have what it takes. They won it last year. They have a great resume. They're 9th in effective field goal percentage and 3rd in defensive effective field goal percentage. 11th in offensive rebound rate. I mean, they got what you want for
Yep.
teams that are going to make a run in March. That's why I believe UConn is the best out of those.
And then James, who is your best team in the country at the moment?
I got Purdue.
Ooh,
Purdue
like
with Zach Edey is 7'4".
Massive.
He is the best player out there. I've seen him play against Michigan State, and he is just a dominant force on the floor.
absolutely.
Being able to get the ball into the basket at a high ceiling. And
Absolutely.
so I feel like Purdue, with the talent they have, is able to make a run.
For sure. I mean, Purdue obviously known for losing early in the tournament, but I feel like you said, they got a lot of experience this year. They got a lot of guys back from last year's roster, in which they did lose in the first round. But like you said, Zach Edey has been a force. I got to see him in person as well. Went to the Michigan-Purdue game, and he absolutely took that game over. So cannot disagree with you there. So getting into my sleeper team, you can argue whether or not it's a sleeper team. I think it is, just because of where they're going to be seated. It's FAU. FAU made a run last year to the Final Four with a really underrated roster and an underrated coach. At the moment, they're ranked number 9, the 9 seed in the Midwest Division, according to Joe Lenardi's bracketology on ESPN. And who they're projected to play if they would win in the first round is Purdue in the second round. And I think if they're in the same bracket as Purdue and they play them in the second round, FAU will win that game. And here's why. I think the Owls have notable wins. They've beaten teams that are really good. They've beaten Texas A&M. They beat Arizona, who I almost picked to win it all. And they also beat Memphis, who's a really good team out of the American. They have guys returning from their near championship roster last year. John L. Davis, the guard, who's averaging 18.2 points per game, along with 3.1 assists per game. He leads the team in both of those. And also, I think this is the biggest thing. They have a really good big. We saw him last year, Vladislav Golden, who is averaging 15.2 points per game and 6.8 rebounds per game. He started, but he didn't play a whole lot last year. But this year, he's really got an extended role. And they also have junior guard Elijah Martin, who's been averaging 13.5 points per game and 6 rebounds per game. With all their returners coming back, they got a good coach in Dusty May. They have the 14th ranked adjusted offensive efficiency, according to KenPom. I think that's a huge reason why I think they'll be a sleeper. And I was going between San Diego State and FAU. Those teams both made the Final Four last year. But I think since FAU is a lower seed, and I also like who they're potentially going to face in the second round, I like FAU as my sleeper.
Well, if FAU is, a debatable sleeper, mine is definitely more debatable. They're really, if you look at rankings and everything, this team's not a sleeper. But I think it's just more of brand name.
Yep.
Creighton.
Absolutely.
Creighton doesn't get the love and respect I feel like they deserve most years. I guess this year is probably their best they've seen in probably since the Doug McDermott days. But, Creighton as a program, again, they're just not a huge school, but they just check all the boxes that you want. They have Kalkbrenner, Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander. All three of them average over 17 points per game.
Absolutely.
Ryan Kalkbrenner won Defensive Player of the Year for the third time in the Big East.
Yeah, he's been a force, and he's been in college for so long.
I know. He's what you want out of your center in this.
Absolutely.
And they're 11th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 24th in defense. So top 25 in both is always a great sign.
Oh, absolutely.
They've beaten UConn. They beat Marquette just in the last 3 weeks. Last 10 games, they have the number 5 offense. 8-5 versus quad 1. It's just they just check all boxes you want. And one thing too, they do struggle getting to the free throw line. They're 354th in the country.
Ooh.
Very low.
Yeah, that'll be
but
something to look at.
they are first in a defensive free throw rate. So they don't allow many free throws as well, which typically bodes well in March Madness.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're third in effective field goal percentage, 19th in defensive. So it's just great offense, great defense.
Absolutely.
It's just a team that, and they're going to be probably a top 3 seed.
Yep.
But again, I just feel like they don't get.
Oh, yeah.
the
I mean,
respect,
if you ask someone, especially a football fan, oh, where's Creighton? They wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, as we were talking about earlier before this podcast, I didn't even know where Creighton was. I didn't know it was in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So, like you said, they're not really an underdog in the fact of their talent. It's their brand name, and it's that no one really has ever picked them to win it all. So
Right.
I love that pick. All right, James, what is your sleeper team?
I have Indiana State.
Ooh.
Indiana State
I like this.
is
Ooh.
projected right now to be the first 4 out, but they do have a 28-6 record.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Lenardi of ESPN has them as a number 11 pick, or a number 11 team, facing in the first four against Drake.
Mm-hmm.
So, Indiana State, they lost to
2 big losses, like 2 Power 5 teams that are really good. I believe Michigan State is one of them.
They lost to Alabama.
Alabama is also
well.
the other
Yeah.
one. Yep.
I'll tell you, Drake though, that game,
Wow.
Indiana State versus Drake. That was, I mean, Tucker DeVries. I remember the name. I kind of forgot about him. That guy is just a great player. I think Drake could upset a team this year as well.
Oh,
I
for sure.
definitely see that happening.
For sure. And then to go with my championship pick, it's extremely arguable. I mean, you can argue a lot of teams win it all, but my pick is going to be North Carolina, and here's why. I think they have the perfect bag and mix of experience along with young, good talent. 2 years ago, Herbert Davis, UNC's head coach, led the Tar Heels to a national championship appearance in which they lost to the Kansas Jayhawks. However, Davis has proved when he makes it into March, he can win games. And they have a few guys from that roster that made it to the championship, including senior guard R.J. Davis, who is averaging 20 points per game. And he's the most consistent player on the Tar Heels, in my opinion. Then you also got senior center Armando Bacot, who's been in college for, it seems like, 10 years. It's insane how long he's been there, but he's averaging a double-double, scoring 14 points per game and then 10.1 rebounds per game. Then also, not a guy that many people talk about, but Stanford transfer forward Harrison Ingram. He's been a two-way nightmare. I think his ability to shoot is pretty underrated. He can score in the paint. And he's also been an extremely good defender for the Tar Heels. So that'll be a guy to look for, his two-way ability. Then lastly, I want to add transfer Cormac Ryan, man. He gives me Brady Manic vibes, just hitting the 3 ball when you need it. His ability to take over a game with his 3-point ability, I think, is really good. We saw that in Duke UNC when he started taking over that game. And just the diversity of talent, like I said, you got Elliot Cadeau, who's a 5-star guard, can't really shoot, but he's a really good facilitator. And Seth Trimble as well, a guard off the bench, who is a highly rated recruit. He also is going to be a big piece if they want to win it all. They are ranked 5th in adjusted defense of efficiency while being 8th in adjusted efficiency margin. And they also won the ACC regular season championship for the first time since 2015. I couldn't believe that.
That's hard to
believe.
But
They did it for the first time when they beat Duke. And I really think that's going to be a sign to come for them to have tournament success.
Yeah, so I've already mentioned the team I think is going to win. I think it's UConn. I think they're going to be the first team to go back-to-back since Florida. You know, I've mentioned all the stats before. Great defense, great offense. They rebound. They do everything you want. But, you know, out of those 3 teams that I previously mentioned, Houston, UConn, Purdue, I think Houston and Purdue, there's some red flags out of those teams.
Absolutely.
Houston, now they have the number 1 defense, which is great.
Insane,
great sign. Calvin Sampson always has his teams playing great defense.
Absolutely.
And they do have the number 13 adjusted offense, but I noticed some things that they are 211th in effective field goal percentage, which is just pretty big red flag. I mean, that's just not what you want to see. And then they shoot about average from 3, 35%. You know, you can have your games where you're gonna light it up, but 35 is about average. And another thing, they struggle getting to the free throw line. They struggle getting there. They struggle shooting when they get there. 68.7% from the free throw line, 300th in the country. That's not really ideal for March Madness.
One of the worst in the country.
So a lot of their offense just comes from offensive rebounding. They don't turn the ball over, and they force a lot of turnovers. So if they face a team with a great defensive rebounder and a team that doesn't really turn the ball over, could be an upset brewing there.
Absolutely.
And then for Purdue, the elephant in the room is obviously this team loses the double-digit seeds every year. Matt Painter, great regular season coach, hasn't proved anything in March. Statistically, this team should have no issues.
Oh, no.
I mean, Zach Edey's going to win player of the year.
You have the Yao Ming of college basketball. You shouldn't have an issue.
Yeah, Zach Edey's going to win player of the year. You know, they're number 2 in the net rating, number 3 in KenPom. They shoot 41% from 3. They don't take many, but when they shoot, it's usually going in. They have a great resume. They've beaten Gonzaga, Tennessee, Marquette, Arizona, Alabama, Illinois twice. I mean, They had the 9th hardest non-conference schedule.
No.
They went undefeated. This team should not struggle, but just the prior knowledge we have of them in March Madness just kind of scares me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they also don't force a lot of turnovers. So if a team's having a good shooting game, they might find themselves in some trouble there. So
absolutely,
there's my reasoning.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that. Purdue, I saw them in person, and when they played Michigan, who's a very bad team, was last in the Big Ten, they weren't hitting their shots. And if that happened last year, we saw they weren't hitting their shots, and Edey was getting doubled. So they were kind of struggling offensively. If they can't hit their shots in a certain game, and Edey, there's a certain plan on Edey to slow him down, because you can't shut down Zach Edey. He's going to get 20 points regardless. But if you slow them down and they're not hitting their shots, they're extremely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it depends on what will happen in the tournament and who will face. But like I said, if they see an FAU in round 2, it's going to be scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you let Zach Edey get his 35, but you shut down the other players, I mean, they're going to be doomed. You know, I mean, Braden Smith's a good player, great shooter. Same with Fletcher Lawyer, Lance Jones. They got good pieces around Edey, but they don't have like, they're not really.
They
like
need
stars.
a Carson Edwards. They need a Carson Edwards.
They don't have a guy that's gonna shoot from 30 foot and light up the team in March.
Yep.
You know, just that's one concern I think.
Absolutely.
But as long as Edey, you know, if they are hitting their shots and Edey's getting his,
they're tough to beat.
They're gonna be
extremely
fine.
tough to beat. And then James, who's your championship prediction?
I have Houston.
Ooh,
Houston.
I like it. I like it.
I have Houston, and I do see Purdue coming in to play Houston
in the championship.
Yeah,
that'd be a good game.
Oh yeah.
I feel like Zach Edey's going to be a force in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then why do you think Houston is going to win it all?
Just they're the top team out there, and.
Well, yeah, they also have LJ Cryer, who is a Baylor transfer. He's been phenomenal for them, and I think that, like you were talking about, Jack, they're extremely well coached, and they're going to be ready to go against any team in the tournament. The question for me is their big going to be able to compete against the really good bigs in the country if they end up making the Elite Eight or the Final Four, like a Zach Edey? I think they would struggle there, but I also think they give other teams fits with their guards and with their forwards, their ability to score and their ability to shoot. And then I just want to add one more thing. I think if Kansas was fully healthy, we could be talking about them being a sleeper team, because we saw last night they lost to Cincinnati. That's a horrible loss. But Dickinson's been struggling with injuries, same with McCullough, and that was a team I was looking at and being like, if they're healthy, man, they might be able to do it. And another sleeper team I wanted to pick was Kentucky, but are they really a sleeper team? I don't really know. They have wins over Tennessee, over Auburn, both on the road, and then they have horrible losses as well. So they're kind of the biggest up and down team in the country. But with that being said, we will wrap up our First Madness podcast with the Collegiate. I'm your co-host, Pierson VanGorp, here with Jack Walker and James Herold. It's been fun. Have a good one, y'all.